It's been months since Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine, leveling parts of the country and prompting the largest military conflict Europe has seen since World War II. While this war has displaced the lives of millions of Ukrainians, the tragic toll of human loss and destruction is unimaginable. But this story is not just about that, it's about how one man's greed for power is affecting the lives of billions of people globally, and how this war of the 21st century is like a hybrid war that is not only playing on the battlefields in Ukraine, but also on various battlefields across the world, from financial markets to global infrastructure to food security, has cut off critical sources of food. War in Ukraine has provoked a massive humanitarian and economic crisis. The International Manager Fund says it will leave lasting scars on the regional and global economies. It all started in February when Putin marched his men into Ukraine, calling it a special military operation, while the West could not join this war with their military, as that would escalate things. They could not also let Russia go rogue, so they started using every tactic in their books to destroy Russia economically and financially, from imposing sanctions to disallowing the import of Russian goods into countries, to sending arms into Ukraine. The European Union and its partners are working to crash Putin's ability to finance his war machine. West was trying to take the upper hand and dominate the landscape. The impact of this war started showing across the world, from rising inflation to food crisis to financial crisis to energy crisis. It's all over the place. Okay, let me break it down for you. Let's start with the energy crisis first. See, Russia is the largest exporter of oil products to global markets, and the second largest exporter of crude after Saudi Arabia. A few years back, Russia and a bunch of European leaders agreed to build a network of pipelines that flow from gas reserves in Russia to the hard land of Europe, helping fuel the European economy. Gas will be supplied directly by the shortest route linking the major Russian gas reserves to European markets without transit risks. Steadily and smoothly, we can guarantee this. What was then considered the result of years of mutual benefit relations is now causing the biggest problem for the Europeans. Most of the countries in the region are heavily dependent on Russian gas, so in response to Western sanctions and their support of Ukraine, Putin cut the gas supply to Europe by more than 60%, raising gas prices in the region by 144. Due to the increase in energy prices, the cost of production for everything from raw materials like steel and paper to finished products like cars and food items increased, sending inflation figures through the roof and putting more pressure on the wallets of ordinary citizens who were already suffering from the impact of the pandemic. In fact, inflation across the US reached levels not seen in the past few decades. It does not end here, as Europe is heading toward winter. Tightening natural gas supply from Russia would mean a dark, cold, and expensive winter for its citizens, and this is creating panic. People are coming to the streets protesting, and even some leaders in Germany are opposing the idea of Germany supporting Ukraine in this war. Now, some people argue that the panic is not a true reflection of the current situation, and that the EU has sufficient gas reserves to meet the upcoming demand. But look at this chart. This is the analysis done by the International Energy Agency and shows if Russia cuts the EU supply in October, then even with 90 reserve, the supply of gas would reach a critically low level after January, and then a long, cold winter. Even if the EU wants, it has limited suppliers to manage this situation. Norway, which is the other large supplier, is already overstretched in its production. Even if the US or other countries like Qatar try and support it, the EU lacks the infrastructure to accept the supply from these countries, and even spending billions will not help due to the amount of time it would take to build the required infrastructure. The winter of 2022 could be Europe's worst winter since the 1970 oil shock, and it is the ordinary citizen who would pay the prices. While Europe is struggling with the energy crisis, other parts of the world are struggling with food security. Before the war, Russia and Ukraine accounted for more than 29 of global wheat exports, 20 of corn exports, and more than 75 of international sunflower oil export in 2021. Ukraine alone exported more than $27 billion in agricultural products and fed 400 million people around the world, mainly to countries in the Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia. So when the war started, these supplies started drying, significantly impacting the global food price index and raising it to the highest level In the last 61 years, not just this food inflation has reached 8.67%, a number last seen in the 1980s, while developed countries are somewhat able to cope it as the most vulnerable regions in the world that are seeing the adverse effect in East Africa. For instance, a perfect storm of continued drought and the economic fallout from the war continued to cause a significant food security crisis. It is estimated that millions of people are on the verge of starvation. Moreover, Russia is the world's largest exporter of fertilizer and trade restriction. And a loss of fertilizer supply from the Russians have led to fertilizer prices rising even faster than food prices. So farmers are reducing production, further adding pressure to the food supply. In a recent report, the United Nations Development Program UNDP has warned that some 71 million people worldwide are experiencing poverty due to soaring food and energy prices driven by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This compared to 125 million people that experienced it during 18 months of the pandemics, lockdowns, and closures. Beyond food, financial, and energy crises, this war has a significant humanitarian crisis. Since the war has started, over 7.6 million refugees from Ukraine have moved into the EU, and approximately 1/4 of the country's total population has left its home as of 30th August. The countries receiving the largest numbers of Ukrainians are Russia, 2.4 million, Poland, 1.4 million, Germany, 1 million, and the Czech Republic, 0.4 million. Many still in the country are forced to live without access to food, water, healthcare, and other essential supplies since the war started over 0 casualties since 24 February, including over 5,500 killed. So while world leaders are playing this high-state game of chicken, it is the ordinary citizens who are facing the heat of this war, both in their homes and outside too. While no one knows when this war will end, it has proven how the greed of one man can affect billions across the world. Thanks for watching.